everybody. Welcome to another episode of Sunday Night Live with me, Jonny Lipsham, here at jonnylipshamstudios.co.uk, here in the southeast part of Scotland. And of course, everybody knows that Scotland is the capital of the world. And the world is a globe, it's not flat. And of course, Scotland is the capital of the solar system, the galaxy, the nebula, and everything else. Anyway. See, that's the first time I've got that joke in 2025. Don't worry, I'm not going to carry on with it much like I did in 2024, because eventually that joke is just going to get very, very old and nobody's going to think it's funny. So we'll kind of stop. We'll kind of stop with that there. But anyway, I hope everybody is doing well. We've only got 8 people here, which is a wee bit low for a Sunday Night Live. Normally we'd get up to easily well into like the late 20s, early 30s maybe. So I'm hoping that some more people will come in the next few minutes. But anyway, I hope everybody has had a great week. It's been my first week back at work for a full week since the beginning of December because as I think I've explained, I spent most of December either in Hamburg or down in England, and traveling between those places, and then of course it was Christmas, and Hogmanay, and so I've not really been doing an awful lot of work here in this office in the whole of December. So I've had a lot to catch up on this last week. But I managed to catch up and everything is all cleared out and ready to start a new week, which is always a good thing. So let's go see who's here. I think I just spied a very old friend of mine who has just come in. I will get to him in just a minute. Billy Morgan's first in, of course, because he always is. Tony Stringer is here as well. Danny Taylor is here. Couch Duziak is here. Dwayne is here. Jimmy Three Balls, aka Dave, is here. And Dwayne is here. Don Oliver is also here. And we got CHDB Music. And, as I mentioned, Pinto Music HTX is my dear friend George Pinto. And I'm very glad to have him back amongst us, which is fantastic. Welcome back, my good friend Dave. I hope you're doing well. It's nice to talk to you a wee bit earlier on Facebook Messenger. And we've also got Russell Harris here as well. Now, there's a name that I can say very, very easily with the Scottish accent. So there you go. Good evening, everybody. I hope everybody is doing well. If you have Studio One questions, that is what tonight's show is all about. I've been helping George. Just before the show started, he reached out to me and he had forgotten how to do something, so I was able to guide him, and all is now well. So his issue is resolved, which is what I like to do. I like to resolve things. He says, thank you for helping me earlier, much appreciated. You're welcome, my friend, anytime. It's kind of what I'm here for. So yes, if people have Studio One questions about features for Studio One Pro 7 that we have so far. I know that some of you who were here for the Hogmanay show, if you remember the Hogmanay show, by the way, if you missed the Hogmanay show for whatever reason, and you would like to go see it, I highly recommend it for 2 reasons. First of all, I had already been drinking quite a bit before I started the show. Secondly, throughout the show, I continued drinking. And the net result was this. I was somewhat sweary. Which, of course, I don't generally do on this channel. This channel is kind of a swear-free zone for the most part. But on Hogmanay, it most definitely was not. I was considerably inebriated, and it was hilarious. I have watched it back a wee bit, and yes, it was pretty funny. And yes, I was considerably drunk and somewhat sweary. So if sweariness is not your thing and you're offended by it, I apologize. No offense was intended whatsoever. I was just To be honest, I had just had a really fantastic New Year's Eve and had been having a lot of fun with my family. And throughout the day, I had just been gradually drinking very, very steadily. And so by the time I got to like maybe an hour before the show, I was just like, I think I'm already quite drunk. I'm probably too drunk to do the show. And my wife Kate said to me, well, you do the show every year. You've never missed a Hogmanay show. You've advertised it now. You've set the show up. You may as well just go do it. And so I did. And so I brought up a bottle of Prosecco with me, which is now gone, by the way. And I made my way through it. And yeah, I got quite sweaty. Peace Value Audio, that is my good friend Mike, is here as well. He says, evening Johnny and all, I've been busy, got 2 songs finished this weekend. Yes! Very pleased to hear that, my friend. He says, I watched a little You Are Pretty Faced. Yes, I most certainly was. And so if you want to see that happen again, you'll have to wait until next Hogmanay. New Year's Eve 2025. If you want to see that kind of thing happen again, then that you're gonna have to wait until then. However, it is possible that you might see that again for my 50th birthday party. October 9th is my birthday, and I'm going to be 50. So the nearest date to that show is going to be October 5th. So I think what we will do is we will have my 50th birthday extravaganza on Sunday, October 5th. And we will continue it on October the 8th, which is going to be the Songwriting Simplified show. In fact, no, scrub that. My birthday extravaganza will be on October the 8th, which is a Wednesday. So that will be this. That would ordinarily be the Songwriting Simplified show. So that is, we will kind of take over Songwriting Simplified and just turn it into a birthday party for my 50th birthday. And we will make it an extended show. I don't care that I will see if I can book time off so that I don't have to work the next day afterwards. Because I would like to definitely celebrate in style. So yes, that's kind of what I'm thinking about doing. Obviously there's another like 10 months to get through before we get to there. So, don't kind of pencil it in your diaries yet until I've kind of firmed up exactly what's going to be happening for my birthday. So, as to whether there's going to be a show actually on the day or the day before, but that's kind of what I'm thinking about. So we will see. I have some decisions to make and some things to think about before we get to that point, but that's kind of where I'm thinking at the moment. All right, so if you guys have Studio One questions, get them in the chat. Otherwise, this will be an extremely short show with nothing going on. It'll be basically a non-show, and I don't want that to happen. We got 14 people here. Let's see. Keith says, he says, I drank 14 pints and smoked around a dozen joints in a 10-hour binge with my show and then yours and the Zoom afterwards. Yeah, you got pretty wasted as well. Dave says, well, at least there were no arrests on that show. There is that, yeah. Fortunately, you can't be arrested for being in charge of a live stream, even if you are utterly inebriated. Okay, we have the first question, and it's a good one. It is a very good one. And that is from George. He says, when creating an instrument track, my console shows the channel and a folder icon. How do I make it so that I don't create a folder? This is a terrific question. The reason why this is a terrific question is because this is actually a new feature in Studio One. And it is actually a good thing. However, if you are using multi-output instruments such as Omnisphere or the Sine Player or Contact or something like that, and maybe you're using those for orchestral instruments or something like that, or you use Contact and you have multiple different instruments inside of Contact, and you're using the different outputs for that, and that's creating an automatic folder channel. That is a new feature. However, like I said, if you're using Contact or Sine Player or Omnisphere or something like that, doesn't quite 100% work. And this is not necessarily a Studio One problem. It's the fact that some of these multiple output instruments just don't work well with this new feature yet. So there's a bit of kind of working out to be done yet. And so it is a new feature, so it is going to be improved, because that's what happens when you get new features inside Studio One. The initial feature is just the initial build of that feature, and then, you know, it gets improved and gets developed, and eventually it ends up being super fantastic and awesome. And it already is pretty good. So let me show you what the story is with that. So I'm going to go over to Studio One, and I'm going to make a new song, and I'm going to show you kind of how this works. Let's go over here. So we will use Impact for this, because Impact is a multi-output instrument. So I have that feature turned off, and I'm going to show you how you can turn it off, because that's basically your main concern, George. Because at the moment, if I click on the mixer view here, I only have the one channel, which is not what you see. This is how the original behavior used to be, and I don't like that color, so let's just go for something else. There we go. So this is how the original behavior used to be, even if you set up multiple outputs. Let's say you set up 8 outputs. This is kind of what you would get. You get individual channels for the different parts of the drum set. So why is this? Oh, it's because there's no kit selected, you idiot, Lipsham. So let's go and grab something like Tom Brecklin drums, and so what we should find now is we got the kick drum there, hi-hat is there, crash is over there, ride cymbal is there as well. So that's where our toms are. Our toms are on channel 4. And what we can do is we can kind of spread these out a little bit if we wanted to. But let's just keep this as it is. This is the original version 6 behavior. All right? This is what you would originally see. But what you now see by default is a new automatic instrument bus channel. Okay? So if you want to turn that off, you got to go to Studio One, Options, Advanced, and Console. And then you need to uncheck this option here, automatically create buses for multi-out instruments. All right. I think that this is, let's just say this particular option here is a little bit buried. You have to go through, preferences, or because you're on a Mac, I think, if I remember correctly, George. So you're going to go preferences, advanced, console, and then uncheck this guy. It's a little bit buried. I think personally that this option should be in the mixer wrench over here. That's where I think it should be. And then it should just be a check option here. And maybe it even should be in its own little section in the wrench options. I don't know, for like bus channel settings or something like that. That's where it should be. And then, you know, you can just turn it on or turn it off as you require there. But at the moment, this is the only way to turn it off, is to uncheck this box here. Now, if you've already created that instrument folder bus, you can just right click and choose remove bus, and it'll pretty much do exactly the same thing. But if you want to just retain the original Studio One 6 behavior, this is where you turn it off. Once you've done this, you hit apply and hit OK. I've already gone ahead and done this because I'm not using any instruments that really require this. And so when this gets created for impact, I don't want that. So for me, I don't want to use this particular feature, so I'm just going to disable it here. But hopefully it will get put in this wrench over here rather than being buried in this menu, because it's a pain in the butt having it buried there, in my opinion. That's just my opinion. And I talk to the development team pretty much every day, so hopefully they will hear what I'm saying and they will fix that. It's not a bug. I just think it's not maybe the best place to put that option. I think it'd be much better for everybody if it was in this here. So maybe down here under listen bus or something like that. Where you've got the enable listen bus, solo through listen bus, maybe have, you know, have like some kind of bus setting option here where you can just turn that behavior off. So hopefully that will work. Let's see, what else do we have? Roger Beckett says, how do we get the channels to have the same names as the samples in Impact? Samples in Impact. Okay, so if you've got samples like this here, what you have to do is you have to name them. Okay? Now, I covered this a while ago, and it kind of doesn't work like it used to anymore. Back in version 3, up until version 5, I think you could do this where you could just have a separate instance of Impact for each of your different parts of your drum set. And then you would have like kick, snare, hats, or whatever. And there was a way you could do that. I don't think you can still do that, unfortunately. Because you know, Studio One has moved on quite a bit. Our virtual instruments have moved on quite a bit, and so some old behaviors just don't apply anymore. And I think that's a case here. So in this case, I think what you're going to have to do is you will note that this one is the kick, and then let's see. I do duplicate track. So if I, let me see something here. See if I can actually do it. Set that one to impact stereo 2. Set this one to impact stereo 3. And then if I go over here, and that is on 2, that is on 3. So this should work because all of these are on individual channels. Let's see something here. So if I set this, if I call this kick, let's see if this works. Kick. Okay, let's change this one to snare. And that works. And hi-hat. Okay, so that definitely works. And so that definitely works. As you can see, we've got the different. So if I was to record a 2-bar pattern on here, or if I was just to even just manually enter a 2-bar pattern here. So let's go. And let's go and stick in some 8 notes. All right. And then if we just select all of that and duplicate it, so we've got a nice little 2-bar pattern here. And then if I right click this, and if I go instrument parts, explode pitches to tracks. Oh, I think I see what it's done. So I'm going to remove that there, and I'm going to remove that there. And then I'm just going to rename these guys. Let's close that editor. Let's open up the mixer, see if it's renamed everything. So let's move that up there. So let's rename this. And I'm going to take off the close because I might modify my pattern. Now, you notice how I didn't do that one. Now, you notice how I've now renamed these kick, snare, hi-hat, kick, snare, hi-hat. Notice how the events have the original names. So how do we fix that? Well, what we do is we go Shift Enter instead of what I did normally, which is just Enter. So if I go Shift Enter, that now changes the events. So now we have kick, snare, hi-hat, kick, snare, hi-hat. So that definitely worked. So now we have tracks, channels, named the same, apart from these ones. I've not done these ones. But let's say, you know what, I'm not going to have any toms or anything. So, hang on a minute. If I click on this down arrow and expand, I can just remove those. So now I've only got those 3, and I can close the instrument rack. So now I've got kick, snare, hi-hat, kick, snare, hi-hat. Everything is set. So the key elements here, if you turn off that multi-out bus functionality, you can do this. With the automatic bus functionality, you can't, because you can't set the channel assignments. Okay? Because they are locked, because it's supposed to be done automatically for you. So the key elements here are making sure that, first of all, you turn off the automatic multi-out instrument feature. Turn that off. Then, when you've created your instances of impact, you need to connect the inputs to, not the inputs. You need to connect the channels correctly to channel 1, channel 2, channel 3, and so on down the line for all the parts of your drum set that you want to do. Then when you do that, even if you create on the first thing, let's say you've already created your instance and you record your part, it sounds great, you love it, you've got your fills in the right place, you've got everything where you want it, then you can explode pitches to tracks, then you can come and assign them as you want here, and then have them show up the same way here. So that you've got kick, snare, hi-hat, kick, snare, hi-hat. And I don't think these guys color the same. I don't know why they don't. There we go. There we go. So now they're all colored the same as well. So I've got tracks and channels colored the same, and then I can close the inspector. Don't need it anymore. So Roger Beckett, I hope that answers your question. I did kind of fudge it around a little bit. So the place to start is by creating your drum track with Impact. Once you've done that, explode pitches to tracks. Then name each one as you want it. Then on each channel, open the inspector and set the channel inputs. So input stereo 1, input stereo 2, input stereo 3. If you're using Impact, that's what you'll need. That's what they will be labeled as, whatever your inputs are. You got to make sure that the instrument itself has all of these set up. Okay? And when you open this, you'll see what they're assigned to. So input stereo 1 is assigned to kick, input stereo 2 is assigned to snare, input stereo 3 is assigned to hi-hat, because that's what we named each one of these inputs when we changed the names down there. Okay? And so this way, the channels and the tracks and the channels have the same names. All the parts are on individual tracks. You can now go ahead and mix this. So you can automatically import the names. No, you cannot. You have to do that. You have to set this manually because you have to tell Studio One what the inputs are. It's not just about labeling. It's not just about, you know, tracks and channels sharing the same name. That's a part of it. So you can make sure that the link visibility of track list and console is checked. Make sure that's checked. And if you're using folders, make sure that's checked as well. So make sure these are checked as well if you need them. But apart from that, you have to, in the inspector, tell Studio One which which MIDI channel of the instrument is assigned to what. This bit is not going to be set automatically. Okay, so you have to do the channel assignments yourself, and that's how you get the channel names to match, like I showed you. It's not something that's done automatically, right? Because Studio One doesn't know your instrument. Studio One doesn't know how you want things to assign, right? Because you might not want them assigned that way. You might not want stereo 1 assigned to kick or stereo 2 assigned to snare drum. You might want it assigned to something completely different. So Studio One doesn't know what you want to do. You have to tell it what you want to do. Okay? It's not going to automatically go, aha, drum set, I need to do this. It doesn't do that. Because you might have, I don't know, an orchestral thing. You might have like sign player and you might be using the BBC SO or something like that. And you might have to set up your different articulations for violins, for violas, for cello, and all of that. Okay? So this is why you have to tell Studio One what you are doing and what you are assigning to what. It doesn't do it automatically because it doesn't know what you want to do. Unfortunately, not yet a mind reader. But, so yes, you do have to do some stuff. You have to do some stuff in Studio One. You have to tell it what you want to do. All right. Let's go back over here. And you guys have already asked a few different questions here. Mike says, I love having splice integration. I have extensive sample library and it's so easy to find what you need now. Yes, that's awesome. And the splice integration is absolutely fantastic. So you do get 2,500 curated sounds, which by the way, changes month to month. So you get those for free from Splice by virtue of having Studio One Pro 7. So what you need to do is you need to set up a free Splice account. You don't have to subscribe unless you actually want to use the entire Splice library. All right. The only thing that comes for free in Studio One is the integration with Splice. You don't get access to the entire Splice library of over 3.5 million sounds for free. That would be absurd. So they're not going to give you that. But what they do give you is 2,500 sounds curated every month which you can use for free. So it's a small selection of what is available in their entire library for free. You do get that. However, if you want to get the best experience with Splice, go and sign up for the Studio One Splice X plan, which is a special plan created for Studio One Pro Plus users for using Splice. And you do get access to their entire Splice library. Okay, so you'll get access to the entire library if you sign up for that plan. I think it's like $12.99 a month. I know it's another subscription, but you know what? You get access to nearly 3 million sounds. If it wasn't a subscription, you'd have to purchase each sound individually. And if you're doing that all the time, then that's going to add up to much more than $12.99 a month. So the best way to work with Splice really is with the subscription. And by the way, I have a subscription to Splice because I knew this was coming. So I went and set myself up a subscription to Splice so that I could get the best of the integration with Studio One Pro 7. Very, very cool. And yes, you don't need to be a member of Studio One Pro Plus. You just have to have Studio One Pro 7 perpetual license. All right, so excuse me. So Dave is asking, when I add an effect to pre-post in mastering in Studio One, it defaults to my MIDI instrument Novation, not connected. Do I need to create an effects bus first and then send? In the project page? No, the project page should not connect to any MIDI device at all, because MIDI is not available in the project page. The project page is strictly audio only. So if you are doing mastering in the project page, you should never be dragging in an instrument, because the instrument tab is not available. So I don't know what you're doing or how you're doing it, but that's not correct. Basically, you just drag an effect from the effects tab to your song, to the insert section of your song, if you want to apply effects just to that particular song in your project. If you want to affect the whole project, like maybe with a compressor, then you drag the effect to the inserts of the master channel in the project page. You shouldn't be dealing with MIDI at all, because it's not possible. So I don't know. Oh, you're working in the song page. Okay, in the song page, just treat it like you would normally treat a song. If you are using an effect from the effects tab, such as a reverb or a compressor, just drag it from the effects tab to the insert section of the channel in the song, in the mixer. Okay, if you're dragging an instrument across, then yes, it will create an instrument. So you're going to make sure you're dragging from the effects tab, not the instrument tab. The Novation instrument should not come up at all if you're dragging an effects from the effects tab, because that's why we have an instrument tab and an effects tab. The two are completely separate. Does Splice have cue voices that say verse, chorus, etc., etc.? I don't know. You're going to have to do a search of Splice to find that one out. Okay, Mike has had a subscription to Splice since 2018. Cool. And he has over 15,000 samples. Awesome. Billy Morgan says, with the free version, there are some files you can't drag into edit window, as Johnny Guy proved a few weeks ago. Yes, there are. You're quite correct. Anything that is not included in the curated 2,500 sounds per month, if they are part of the subscription, you won't be able to drag them in. They will not work. It will prompt you to subscribe. So that is correct. I think the idea is mapping the MIDI to the software. If you're mastering, you don't need to be mapping any MIDI to anything. You don't deal with MIDI when you're mastering. When you're doing song production, that's when you'll be dealing with MIDI. So, yeah, I don't know what you're doing, Dave, to be really honest. I'm sorry. Let's go see what else we have. Okay, Kyle says, talk about normalization, event gain, and channel gain. Okay, yes, I can do that. And for that, I will need to open a different song. All right. This is mostly instrument based. Let me close this one and go and open a different song. So let's hit no on that. And let's go and open something else. Alrighty, so let's go back over here. And what we have here is my song that I did for the Halloween challenge last year, which is called Bagpipe Murder. It's very dark. It's very orchestral. And yes, a bagpipe, not the bagpipe player, but the bagpipe itself does get brutally stabbed at the beginning of the song, as I shall play for you right now. There you go. And now the bagpipe is dead. Thanks be to God. Alright, so, event gain. And, let me see, what else was it? I have to scroll back up in the chat. Normalization, event gain, and channel gain. Okay, event gain and channel gain are kind of related, but not the same. Event gain happens on the event level. So, for example, let us take this guy here, and let us expand this guy. And then let us also zoom in on this little piano event here. I'm going to solo it up so you can hear what it sounds like. All right, so that's what we've got there. So if I right click this event and turn on the gain envelope, now what you'll see is we got this nice little line running through the event here. So I can adjust this. I can adjust the overall gain with the gain handle here, or I can just select one little bit here and I can trim that down, or I can raise it up, whatever I want to do, or I can just keep it as is. Which is what I want to do in this case. I don't want to touch the gain. But this is event gain. So if you have like a particular transient, let's say, for example, this one here, which you think, hey, this guy is just sticking out a little bit, poking out above everything else, I can just turn that down. Or let's say this one. So let's click there, and then let's just turn that one down. So now that's tucked in a little bit better with all the other transients of this particular event. So when we play this, it's a little bit better balanced overall in terms of the overall dynamic range of this event. So this is event gain, clip gain, whatever you want to call it. And then this guy just overall turns the whole event up or down. So channel gain. Channel gain, you will see this when you enable the input controls. And with these enabled, I can just turn these up or down as I want to. All right, and then I can control click that to make it reset to 0. And you've also got these polarity inverse buttons as well. Now, if you have certain PreSonus interfaces, you also get these controls that are for the audio device. If I go over here, you'll see this a little bit better on these audio channels here. So you've got the level set for the preamp gain currently. This is for channel 1. And then you've got the phantom power, which is on, because this mic is a condenser mic, it needs that. But we've also got a high pass filter. And then this A here is for auto gain. Auto gain is very cool. If you've got like a set of mics for a drum set, and you've got something like the Quantum HD8, the cool thing here is you can do it here. You can select your channels, and then you can hit the A, and then you can tell your drummer, just play. Just play your whole drum set, and what it will do is it will adjust the gain until they are good. And it does it automatically. You don't actually have to go and spend time fiddling about with setting the gain of each one of your channels. It will listen to the input going in, and then it will correctly set the input gain for each of those mics. It's a very, very, very cool, very powerful feature, and it is a great time saver. It means you can set the gains and the input levels of all of your mics for your drums in a matter of 30 seconds. Literally 30 seconds. Instead of doing each individual part and then the overheads and then the room mics, which may take, 15, 20, 30 minutes, maybe even longer to do it that way. You do this in 30 seconds and it sets the gain correctly. And then once that's set, it's stored within the unit, and it's also stored within the song in the song settings files. So that's all set as you want. It's also got a pad. So these are stereo channels, which is why you see 2 phantom powers, 2 high pass filters, and of course 2 pads. All right. So on a mono channel, you would only see 1 of everything, including the polarity buttons as well. So that's what these are. So you've got input controls, and then you've got audio device controls. If your interface supports these, you will see these. If it does not, you will not see those, even if you have audio device controls enabled. You just won't see anything. They just won't show up. So I'm going to turn those off for now, because most people are not going to see those unless they have a device that supports them. But you can certainly manually turn down the input coming into the channel here. This is great. This is great for gain staging. Let me show you how I like to do gain staging. If I go over to this song here. Now, obviously these are not the same, but let's imagine, let's turn that off, let's turn that on. Let's imagine that these are audio and they're not MIDI. In fact, we could select these 3 channels here, and we could right click and we could go transform to audio. Let's do that. And we'll render, we'll preserve. Yeah, we'll take that. That's fun. I didn't want it to do that. It would appear that we have kick, snare, hat, kick, snare, hat, kick, snare, hat. I don't know why it did it that many times. That was strange. So let's just remove all of those. All right, so now we've got these audio channels. Oh, weird. Snare's not playing. That was strange. I don't know why it did that. I do not know why it did that. That's very strange. I've never seen Studio One ever do that before in my life. Anyway, irregardless, which is a word that doesn't exist, by the way, but Americans seem to like to use the word irregardless, because regardless is to not regard something, so you don't need to put error in front of it. Anyway, so what I can do now is I can set these channels in pre-fader mode. So I can right click in here and I can go pre-fader metering. And then what I can do is I can turn all of these down like that. And then what I can do, if I was able to see gain on these individual channels, I could just press play. You don't hear anything, but I can go, okay, this is a little bit loud. Let's turn this down. There we go. And then let's say this one's also a little bit loud. Let's turn that one down. And that one's also a little bit loud, so we turn that one down as well. And this way, I've done gain staging using the channel inputs without affecting the fader levels. Okay? And then I can stop. And then I can select these, and I can control click those. And they go back up to 0 dB. And now they play at the, or these other two would play at the correct volume level. So that is how that is done. So that is the difference between event gain, clip gain, channel gain, audio inputs, audio input gain, and input gain on the channel, and then doing gain staging. This is the way I do gain staging. And I started doing it this way when pre-fader metering came out with version 4.5. As soon as that was there, I was just like, oh, great. That means I don't have to listen to the song anymore when I'm doing gain staging. Because I don't want to listen to the song. Because if I'm listening to the song, my brain automatically starts hearing, oh, I need to EQ that. I need to EQ this. This is too loud. That's too loud. I don't want to be at that point. So I want to turn everything down so I'm not hearing it, but I still want to see the input levels. So as soon as we had pre-fader metering available, that was, for me, that was like one of the biggest features ever added to Studio One, ever. And so it made a massive difference to me. Because it meant that I'm not going to be listening to the song. So my mind isn't going to start leaping ahead into the next phase. It's just going to be focused upon setup, which is what gain staging is, if you do gain staging. Not everybody does gain staging. Personally, I don't believe in gain staging in the traditionally accepted form of it that most people talk about. Most people talk about, oh, you need to do gain staging, but then they don't really understand why. It's just something that they've heard on YouTube videos. Hey, you need to gain stage. You need to gain stage. In the digital domain, the way we have it now in 2025, gain staging is a little bit obsolete. It's not actually really necessary. However, what you might encounter if you don't do any gain control whatsoever, you just throw up faders to 0 dB and then you start doing your mix. What you might encounter is, if the song is recorded and certain elements of the song, like maybe a vocal was recorded a little too loud, lead guitar recorded way too loud, but hasn't clipped, it's just loud. You could certainly, play around with the faders and try and get a mix that way. But you might find that the guitar fader is like almost down at the bottom because the guitar itself is really, really loud. The gain of that particular channel is just really loud. So this is where I kind of apply maybe a little part of what would be traditionally accepted as gain staging. Except I don't call it gain staging because we're in the digital domain. There's a noise floor of greater than negative 144 dB. So it's not the issue that it once was. So what do? I do this procedure that I've talked about, and I'm calling it gain staging because I think it's useful as a reference term for you guys. But for me, it's not really gain staging. I use the pre-fader metering and I turn the faders down to 0 so I'm not hearing it. And then what I'm using here is I'm using the input gains to basically make sure that the input level of each of the channels is not too loud. That's it. So if the volume of, if the pre-fader volume of a lead vocal is like near zero dB, I'm going to turn that sucker down using the input controls at the top here. I'm going to turn it down until it's to something reasonable. So some people talk about, you know, minus 12 dB, minus 6 dB, minus 18 dB. To be honest, pick what suits you. I don't really care. I don't really think it's that important. Just kind of find a point where you go, this is a reasonable volume level. Let's just set everything to this reasonable volume level. There's not really a signal to noise issue that once existed that made gain staging essential, which is what the analog domain was all about. You needed to exceed the noise floor. Whereas in the digital domain, you don't. It's not necessary. So gain staging really doesn't make a lot of sense in the digital domain, and yet for some reason the practice persists to this day, and a lot of people think it's absolutely kind of, it is a rule, it is a biblical principle, so to speak. Whereas I don't see it like that. I see it as just a way, I call it platforming. I set a game platform that everything sits on. And I'm not doing it because I need to concern myself with noise floor. I'm doing it so that I'm not having to play that dance with the clip light on the master channel. Because as you add EQ, as you add compression, as you start doing side chaining, as you start doing parallel compression, all of that gradually adds up. And eventually that clip light is going to start coming on, and you're going to start finding yourself going over 0 dB, and then you have to redo the volume levels of your mix, bring everything down a little bit, then you carry on a little bit longer. Oh, clip light's gone off again, let's turn everything down a little bit more. And so you're doing this constant dance with the master fader and the clip light. This is why I set everything at that platform using the pre-fader metering and the input controls to start with, so that everything is kind of at a reasonable volume. I'm not going for minus 12, I'm not going for minus 18, I'm not going for minus 6. I'm just going for something that is reasonable, not that's going to give me some headroom before I start, so that the distance between the peak level and 0 dB is reasonable across every channel. That's what I'm trying to achieve, so that I'm allowing myself the headroom budget per channel so that I can do things like EQ, compression, parallel compression, serial compression. I can do all of that stuff that's going to increase the perceived loudness, increase the overall volume, the overall gain, the overall LUFS ultimately. So that's why I do that. That's the reason for that. So I hope that has explained that. After show Zoom is going to be at the end of the show in 5 minutes or so's time. I assume you can automate channel gain as well. Yes, you can automate anything in Studio One apart from your microwave. You cannot automate your microwave in Studio One, but you can automate pretty much everything else. Let's see. No, I was referring to you folks using Impact as to mapping drums. Yeah, that's kind of a totally, you basically asked, sorry Dave, but you totally asked like 3 completely unrelated questions one after the other, and I was not sure what the relationship between the 3 different things were. So that's kind of like a different thing. Sorry about that, Dave. Mike says, I get the device controls and the input controls on my Studio 192. Yes, you will. You need to connect the channel to the track in the inspector. It's a bit of a process, too much to explain. Maybe I'll make a video. Yes, that's exactly what you need to do if you want to get the track and channel names the same in when you're using a multi-output virtual instrument. Or you can use the decreased volume to the original track. Yes, you can do that. You can go and turn down the event gains. So there are different approaches to gain staging that different people have. Some people do it on the event level. They will just go down and turn each individual. They'll go from the top all the way down to the bottom, and they will either turn up or turn down the events. The problem with that is when you are looking at the events, you are not looking at the mixer. So the only way really to be able to do that is to have this open here on the side, so that you are looking at the levels here whilst you're turning up or down the event gain here. So you have to have the inspector open to make that possible, so that you can look at this, you can look at this, and it's actually fairly easy that way. Personally, this is actually, when I first started using Studio One, this is exactly how I used to do it, because that's exactly how I did it in Cubase for decades, because that was really the easiest process to do it in Cubase. And I'm aware that you're not seeing that. Sorry about that. So yes, you have to have the inspector open if you want to do event-based gain staging, so that you can see what the levels are at, because otherwise you can't really see what the level is at in this little meter here, because it doesn't have any reference, whereas this does have reference. All right, so you can do it this way, or you can do it this way with the input controls. And this, to me, is the easiest way, especially with the pre-fader metering, because you're seeing the level of input coming into the channels before it hits the fader. And so you know it's the actual gain coming direct from the event into the channel. And then you can just use these controls to turn it up and down. So for me, these controls and the pre-fader metering are the two best features in Studio One that have ever been implemented, by a long shot. As a mixing engineer, these are super duper powerful, and it makes gain staging a breeze. Even if I've got more than 200 channels in the song, it makes it so much easier. Now, I have a Studio Live mixer, which is in front of me here, that you can't see. And I can turn down the input gains using the knobs on the fat channel. I can do that. I don't normally do it that way, but I can do. I normally use the mouse, but I can use the Studio Live, and I can use the fat channel to adjust everything there, so that I'm actually not really using the mouse. I'm just hitting the channel select button and then doing my settings and everything on the mixer, and then I just use the select button to move to the next channel. I can totally do that, and then I can page over and keep going. And to be honest, I'm not really looking at the screen. I'm looking at the levels coming into the mixer. I've done it both ways, and I like doing it either way. So anyway, that's a bit of a long answer to that question there. But anyway, we have reached the end of tonight's show, so I'm going to go back over here. Thank you very much, everybody, for coming. We peaked at 24, which is not bad. We've definitely done better, but likes are definitely quite low compared to the number of viewers we've had. So if you have liked what I have shown tonight then and talked about, then please do hit the like button. I would appreciate it. We had a bunch of terrific questions. Thank you very much for joining me, everybody. If you want to go to the after show party, then please do click the Zoom link there, which will take you to Billy's Zoom that he has set up already and is ready to go. So please do join over there if you would like to do that. Otherwise, I will see you on Wednesday for Songwriting Simplified. Bring your songwriting questions, bring your arranging questions, bring your composing questions, bring your music theory questions, because that is what Wednesday nights are for. Thank you very much for watching, everybody, and I will see you on Wednesday. You guys are definitely, by a long shot, the best. I appreciate you more than you could possibly know. Let's get this year kicked off in style as we head towards 6,000 subscribers my 50th birthday, and a bunch of Studio One awesomeness that is coming in 2025. You guys are going to have your socks well and truly blown off this year. Take care, everybody. Good night.
Bye.